You see that?
No.
It's
What do I do with my
right now. I'm seeing your knees. Seriously, see this lens? It's a wide angle. All right. What the hell's the date today?
18th?
Of March.
March
19?
18th, 2003.
Okay.
I'm 66 years old.
Do you go by Ed or Edward or
Ed.
Eddie or
Ed.
what was your nickname when you were a kid?
Eddie.
Eddie.
Right.
Okay.
Herbert called me Eddie Boy.
Seriously?
Yeah, that was... Or Aunt B called me Eddie Boy, too, I remember.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What were your hobbies when you were growing up? What did you like to do? What was your favorite thing?
Boating, swimming.
Motorcycle. You remember a motorcycle?
Oh, that wasn't growing up. That was
Well,
when I was in my 30s or 20s.
when did your mom... How did your mom meet your dad?
That one I don't remember.
Okay. Do you remember at all the year they got married at all?
I believe it was 1926. Alice was born in 28.
And how old are you now?
66.
So your birthday is...
May 23rd, 1936.
And when did your dad pass away? And from what?
June of 1977. He technically died of pneumonia, but...
Is that right?
Well, technically, yeah. But he had cancer, and they did not operate. Decided it was inoperable.
So he had cancer of what?
The spine.
Jesus, really? What age was he when he died?
77.
77. And did he have his own clothing store?
He had
Or
several
am I thinking of
different.
somebody
He
else?
had several different clothing stores. Yes, going back to the early 30s.
So he was always involved in clothing.
That's correct.
What were some of the names? Do you remember?
Shirley Shop on East 131st and Miles.
Shirley Shop?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
How the hell you know the address?
pardon?
You know the address?
The address? No, but it was.
Well, you said. Well, okay. You
It
said
was
the
at
location.
It was East 131st and Miles Avenue.
Okay.
I've gone by there recently. It's a ghetto.
Yeah. What else?
Manufacturers Merchandise Mart at the corner of 124th and Superior. One of his major stores was 9th and Superior in the old Greyhound bus terminal.
What did your dad?
That was in the 30s.
What did your dad like to do? What was? I mean, everybody's hobbies. Some people woodwork, some people ski, some people do whatever. What did your dad have any particular interest that you can remember?
None.
How about your mom?
Taking care of my dad.
Yeah. Was your dad sick for a long time before?
No, he was not.
So when you kids grew up in the house, you and Alice.
Well, don't forget, there wasn't just
Who
me
was in
and
the house?
Alice. When Alice was there, it was Aunt B, Uncle Hi, and Grandma was the Grandma Kay.
Grandma Kay.
Celia Custon was the boss.
Right.
That was at 591 East 109th Street. Which was, the house was purchased in 1919 from Herb Gleitz, who was, no, I'm sorry, not Herb Gleitz. It was Bill Jack of Jack and Heinz.
So what was the address again?
591 East 109th Street.
And that's where everybody lived together.
That's correct.
And Aunt B lived there?
That's correct.
And your mom
She
and
moved in
Grandma Kay?
1948.
They moved in 48
Right.
to...
2363 Ashurst Road.
Yeah, right. And my mom was downstairs.
That's correct.
So when they moved to that house in 1948, my mom and dad moved downstairs, and I think Carol was, that was close to the time she was being born.
Approximately that time, yeah.
B, and who else moved upstairs? I mean, B and
Uncle
High.
High.
And then where did, oh, and then, so then your house in 1953 was built, right?
That's correct. It was actually finished in early spring of 53.
So between 48 and 53, where did Grandma Kay and your mom and your dad and you guys live?
Oh, then we had 591 East 109th Street all to ourselves, relatively speaking.
Oh, so you stayed in the same house?
Absolutely, but then Alice moved out of sharing a bedroom with Grandma Kay, and she had Aunt B and Uncle High's bedroom.
Right, okay. Then you guys built the house, 2365, and moved over in 53.
That's correct.
And my dad designed the house.
He was the architect for the house. That is correct.
I remember that your mom and B they would rent real estate, and they would used to go on weekends to collect rent.
That is correct.
What can you tell me about that? Because my memory is very vague on that. I was young, but I remember
My
that.
memory is distinct. It was very seldom B went. It was Grandma Kay and my mother went, with generally my father driving, or sometimes just the three of us, because I used to go with them. It was Vienna Court, which was at 86th and Cedar, and it was an alleyway and the access to approximately 10 houses, which at that time rented from $55 to $65 a month. And then there were...
So how many houses did they have?
Well, they had a total on East 103rd Street, just down the street from there. I believe there was 4 houses, of which 3 were 2 or 3 family houses.
Really?
So let's say ballpark 16 different suites.
That many?
That many was small potatoes. As I understand it, in the late 20s and early 30s, and was before I was born, that Lakeview Realty, which was controlled by Alex Custon, my grandfather, and Celia Custon, Grandma Kay, had close to 400 different suites. And they lost the money and the property, which was heavily mortgaged, and all the money in Morris Plan Bank, which in the bank holiday of 1933 closed up, and they were left relatively destitute with only those suites that they managed to salvage. Aunt B had in her name at that time, and subsequently sold, an apartment building on Hayden, which was also saved, and another apartment building, I believe, on St. Clair.
MP owned 2 apartment buildings?
That's correct.
How many units in each?
Put it this way, they were Grandma Kay's, but
right.
The title was in Aunt B's name. Actually, Vienna Court was in Aunt B's name.
So who did all the maintenance and repair and whatever? I mean, that's a tremendous
There
amount.
was... the last guy that I can recall, his name was John, that was a handyman that
took care of all that.
Did a lot of that, yeah.
But I mean, that was a big family business that they would be involved in the whole time, and every weekend go collect rent. And
well, Grandpa Alex, that was his business for many years after they closed up the grocery stores, was collecting the rent and maintaining the properties. Is the history that which was probably all or most of the 20s.
What do you remember of my mom? Your favorite person there? What do you remember growing up? What did you guys used to do together? What do you remember? Any crazy stories that you
I used to visit on Somerton, my Aunt Ann, who was my favorite aunt, she really was. Turn it off.
And that's Mom's mom.
That's right. I remember a big
What was the address of Somerton? My mom would know. I don't.
I've known it and I don't recall it right now.
So who lived in that house?
3020, I think it was, but I'm not positive.
So Aunt Ann lived in that house.
Uncle Sam.
Who's Uncle Sam?
Uncle Sam was Aunt Ann's husband.
Oh, okay. My granddad. Great-granddad. My mom's dad.
It was your grandfather, not your great-grandfather.
Yeah, right. That too.
Pardon?
Right.
Did you know he was in the Navy?
I remember a picture with the Navy shirt.
Yeah. What I can remember of your mother is visiting my Aunt Ann a lot of times on the way to Park Synagogue and getting off the bus and either walking to Park Synagogue or walking back from there. And that was a pretty good walk. But she had an obsession with the album from Oklahoma, which, if I recall, was 1944. And if you sat in that house for 1 hour or a whole day, all you heard was Oklahoma.
So what were some crazy stories that my mom would get in trouble or do, or nothing that you can remember?
No. Oh yeah, I can. When I was in the seventh grade, I was taking French, and your mother insisted that I go to class the next day and ask my French teacher what the word demi derriere meant.
Is that right?
That really happened.
Did you do that?
I did, and I got thrown out of class, too.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Give me some more stuff like that. What else?
That happened.
How about any memories when they were living downstairs in 2363?
I was downstairs. They were upstairs. Oh, no.
No, 2363, not
20C?
or not 25.
Oh,
65.
okay.
So B's house, downstairs.
I don't remember anything special happening, going on.
Let's see. Okay, so Bob Blakemore.
In 1946, Sam Levitt, your grandfather, opened a store with a partner named Bob Blake, which was a major store, probably the size of a Dick's today, with comparable merchandise, but also heavy on bicycles, which Bob Blake had a history of. It actually had a shooting range down the basement, very heavy in rifles and pistols.
A real shooting range with
Yeah.
real bullets?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yes. I think possibly archery range, too.
Yeah.
This is a brand new store, huge. It might not have opened till 47. But we used to have Hanukkah parties every year, and I was invited, instead of waiting to get whatever I would get for Hanukkah, to go to the store and just pick out anything I wanted by your grandfather. 1 year. The store did not last very long. I believe it went bankrupt, and it was my impression that the money disappeared, and Mr. Blake was, let's say, less than 100% honest. And money had been borrowed from Uncle Joe to open this store. And I don't know this for a fact, but it's my impression that either your parents either did in fact, and some years later when they could afford it, repaid that loan, or attempted to repay the loan.
What did the store sell?
The store sold a wide variety of every conceivable sporting goods you could name, toys and guns and bicycles, including apparel, sporting apparel, hunting clothes. It was huge. It was a superstore located on Broadway, close to the intersection of Union Avenue.
But in the early days, a lot of people lived together. That was normal. And in 2360,
It's even more common today, as I understand.
2365, you had a full house.
That's for sure.
Who was there again?
My mother, my father, Grandma Kay, and I were downstairs. Upstairs was your mother and father.
Right.
And
I was for a short period of time.
Excuse me, let me finish. Your sister Carol, and I'm not sure of, I believe it was during your mother's labor pains that she and I played gin rummy for hours at the kitchen table because your father was not home while she timed the labor pains. And
with whom? The labor pains for who's?
I believe that was for Leland.
Yeah.
Because I think my parents had, I moved into the house before my parents and Grandma Kay did, because I was going to Heights High School, so it saved a long bus trip. So that would have been probably late 52, 53, which means would make Leland
right.
About 50 years old, is that correct?
Yeah, it would be Leland. Because he just turned 50.
Okay, well then, that's what I'm saying.
Right. Do you remember anything about me being born? Because I would have been born at that house. Not at the house, but I would have been born at the time.
No.
So you don't remember anything about me. Thanks a lot.
No. Well, what could I tell you?
Any other good stories that you know?
Well,
who hated who liked who? Give me some good dirt there in the earlier days. Everybody get along, or people?
It's not like that everybody.
There you go. Tell me what we remember about Madison Lake. I remember getting a bath in one of those metal tubs.
In the metal tubs in the garage, is that what you're talking about?
I remember out in the front lawn.
Oh, the metal. Oh, okay, that was a large galvanized tub on the.
There you go.
Okay. Well, I can remember stomping grapes in the tubs in the garage so Grandma could make jelly or wine. There were.
Whose idea was it to buy that property out there?
As I understand the history, and of course it was before I was born, because I believe it was 1928 is what I was told.
That's when they bought it?
Pardon? Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was purchased for the benefit of your mother, who was supposedly diagnosed sickly, and the summer fresh air would do her good. That's what I was told.
What was she sickly with?
I don't know.
Okay.
But the interesting thing is, we both know, if you've ever seen the embroidery that Grandma Kay did of Summer House of 1903, was apparently that was her dream, was to have a summer home. So she realized her dream by buying the house, even though I believe title was in your grandmother Ann's name
Huh.
from the get-go.
No, I didn't know that. So how often did you guys used to have everybody go out there?
Well, from the time I was very young, it was Grandma Kay and I, even during the war, let's say, I believe probably from the time I was 5, 6 years old, she and I stayed out there together. Then the family came on weekend, generally just for the day on Sundays, because the men had to go home and work. Aunt Lil and her children, meaning Herb, Roberta, and Laurel, would come sometimes for 1 week during the summer. Sometimes maybe 2 weeks max.
So at times you had a lot of people out there.
The cottage had enough beds to sleep about 10 people in various locations.
What did you guys do out there aside from work on the house? I mean, what did everybody, did they go boating? Did anybody have a boat or?
In 1946, your father ordered, who paid for it, I don't know, a 8-foot Air Force life raft, which we picked up at the Railway Express station in Madison. And I literally, when I was 10 years old, trained myself to balance this thing on my head and could carry it from the cottage to the lake. And it was not an easy task. Generally, if Herb was there or somebody else was there, Mel Perlman next door had a bigger one, and we used to race and really built up a lot of strength by paddling that around the lake. The most fun of all was, everybody knew Lake Erie was treacherous, and it didn't make any difference how high the waves got. It was, once you got off the beach, we'd take it out in storms purposely, just to go bobbing up and down on that lake.
Didn't my mom have a job where she worked at some drugstore, soda shop at the corner there on Main Street in Menor, or not Menor, but Menor on the Lake?
If she did, I don't recall it.
Okay.
That would be, since your mother is 9 years older than I am, I don't recall any period of time where she and I lived in the cottage together. My first job was sort of bizarre.
Your first job? At what age?
Age of 8.
Yeah.
I was invited by Mel Perlman, who had the job, at the dance hall. The year was 1944, and they had name bands and charged 10 cents a dance besides a beer and wine license and the pinball machines. So our job at the end of a dance was to take a rope, and from the center, he went one way and I went the other way, and the rope got around the people's butt, and we literally pull them off so that the next dance could start faster. Otherwise, the guys would linger and be talking to the girls, but this way the owner could collect more money if they had to pay another dime for the next dance. The following year, I went to work at the skating rink, putting on skates, which is where I learned to skate very well for 2 years. Then I got Herb a job the following year, sweeping the floor of the skating rink, which was not an easy task because that was a lot of floor to sweep. And then he had a second job at night, managing the pop gun, was they shot corks out of a gun, an air gun, to try and knock down things.
You and Herb used to do a lot of stuff together? I mean, you're similar in age.
Herb and I grew up like brothers. He's a year older than I am, and we did a lot of things together. I then went to work at the basketball shooting, spill the milk, and this Mr. Williams had 3 stands. He had a dart throwing, basketball, and spill the milk, and then shoot arrows alongside that. And my job originally was picking up the milk bottles for spill the milk. Then I got promoted to the basketball shooting, which I practiced for hours during the week when things were slow.
Do you remember anything at all? And what memory do you have of my father and my mother dating or getting married or anything at all from that time?
I was at the wedding. I know nothing prior to.
Where was the wedding?
The wedding was at the chapel at Park Synagogue, which was originally a girls' gymnasium. And I got drunk on punch. I believe that was 1947, so I would have been 11 years old.
That was your last memory of her, right?
That would be wishful thinking.
All right.
You asked the
No,
question, I gave you a straight answer.
This is supposed to be fun. This is not, it's not the Discovery Channel here.
It's common knowledge in the family that we are not bosom buddies.
Where did that whole thing start, by the way? Or should I ask? Like, you guys got along fine up until X, wherever X was. Somebody pissed in somebody's
in all
wheaties.
honesty, I would have to say that the serious problem started in May of 1985 on the trip with Aunt B, my mother, in your mother's car when I started driving. She asked me to drive, headed for Herbert's 50th birthday celebration. When we got to the bottom of Ashurst